What's up guys? Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to be discussing my Air Force basic military training experience during COVID-19. I'm going to go through everything week by week breakdown of what I went through and how basic military training was for me during the COVID-19 pandemic. If you're new to this channel, please smash that subscribe button down below and leave this video a like if it helps you out at all. I produce one video a week. It's beneficial if you are joining the military, joining the Air Force, or thinking about joining the Air Force. So I wrote down everything that happened on my experience during BMT in my notebook here. They give you this notebook during your time at basic military training. Whenever I was bored, I decided why not just jot down notes about making videos. So I'll be referring back to this notebook so I could mention exactly, word by word, what I was going through and everything that happened at basic military training. My experience during COVID-19 and BMT was a new experience. We were the first ever in tents and the first ever to graduate in tents. We arrived out of nowhere. So we pulled up to a parking lot off of these buses. So you're going through the whole experience. You just went from the airport to BMT. You get off the bus and you expect to be in a dorm room. You expect, all right, I'm gonna get my bed, I'm gonna stand next to the bed, all the videos you already probably watched. And we pulled up to a parking lot with just street lights and a bunch of tents, and I was like, where the hell am I at right now? And then they told me I was gonna be living there for 2 weeks. They pulled me over, threw me in a tent with 9-10 different guys that I never knew before. They had little trailers set up right next to the tents. These trailer-like boxes were our portable showers and portable toilets for our next 2 weeks there. It wasn't like a porta potty type thing. It was 3 showers in one stall with 3 curtains. So you had your privacy, you had walls in between you. And then there was 3 sinks in each of the shower sections, and then you also had the area you would go to the bathroom in. It had 3 stall doors with 3 stalls and 1 sink in the bathroom section. It was not bad at all. This is what we used for the next 2 weeks of our first 2 weeks of training. Until then, we would have to be using these. We wouldn't be showering in the big open bin with a bunch of different stall doors with a bunch of shower heads showering with 25 guys. It was not like that for 2 weeks, so that was a little bit of a plus. Not like I cared or did anything about it. It was just normal. But the tent situation, the tents were not like small little tents. You also didn't have regular beds in these tents. We slept on cots for 2 weeks. Just cots and a pillow and a sleeping bag. They gave us all sleeping bags, and our air conditioning unit was extremely cold. So it was like 60 degrees in Texas every day. We would wake up, and then every night it was like 100 degrees. It was a crazy experience. The air conditioning unit was amazing. It worked majority of the time. It broke like once or twice, and they had people out there fixing it for us right away. So the tents were not too bad, except you had to sleep on cots in sleeping bags, and you had about 9 to 10 guys in the tents. The tents were like 50 feet long, and in my flight we had 3 separate tents. I was in it with 10 guys, and then you don't really meet the other 20 guys in your flight until you are in the dorms, which is 2 weeks later. So you get to know these 10 people, like this is your flight, this is your 10 people. So you really get close with those 10 people, and then you all merge into the bigger flight, and you already know people that you're gonna be dealing with. So it's not like we didn't interact with them that much, but you didn't get to know them personally like you would in the dorm room setting. So we would march a lot. And the section of BMT that these tents were set up in was the furthest point of the base. So we had to march the farthest every single day. It wasn't like coming down from your dorm room and then going straight to breakfast, lunch, dinner, PT, doing all that. We had the farthest marching routes and everything. So it was a really fast-paced thing. You had to learn how to do everything really quick, and you were in the straight up heat 24/7. They ended up assigning us PT gear. So they gave us PT gear with hats because kids were getting sunburned. So they wanted to avoid the whole sunburn situation. So they had us wearing camouflage hats in PT gear, looking like a bunch of weirdos. And they would just laugh at us, the MTIs, because it's something they've never seen or had to do before. We legit march so far every day, and I, for one, sucked at marching. So when I have to go from just normal walking, going about my day-to-day life, to having to march everywhere, never marching before, I've never done ROTC, did anything like that, they would actually stop my flight because of me, one time this was, and they kept yelling at me. I had it stop 3 times in a row within 5 minutes because I was marching bad, and they had my whole flight down doing push-ups, sit-ups, stuff like that until I got it right. And then eventually I became pro because I just stuck with it and learned how to be a professional marcher at that point. So I was tired of getting yelled at for marching, so then I just learned how to march. And then it was later on in the first 2 weeks where we actually learned drill movements, left face, right face, about face, stuff like that. And that is all very easy stuff to learn. During this 2-week experience in the tents, they introduced 341s. 341s look like this. It says your last name, first name, middle initial, your rank, organization, and your flight. So a 341 is pretty much pulled if you do something bad, but they could also pull it if you do something excellent, which only one person in our entire flight for the whole 7 weeks of training got one for excellence. And if you get that, you're looking pretty good. The MTIs like you. I got one pulled for having my hand in my pocket. A bunch of other people got them for laying down, sleeping, stuff like that. They introduced 341s. They gave us foot lockers. They gave us clothes in the first 2 weeks. They also introduced how to roll the socks, how to roll your shirts, and how to do all that. They had our foot lockers set up in positions in the tents, and they were getting us in the mindset for when we were going to go to the dorms, because usually they introduce this all right away in the dorms. For us, they had to introduce it in the tents, in foot lockers. My MTI would come in, look in the foot locker. If it was wrong, he'd dump it all out and make you redo it, re-roll it, and we have nothing else to do. So they were just teaching us how to do this until we're out of quarantine. So our quarantine process was a bunch of learning. It didn't stop. We just kept learning. We kept reading. We kept marching. And then around the 2-week mark of our 2-week quarantine, we started PT, our first ever PT assignments, and we would just go straight out to working out and doing all that. And they introduced 1x3s, which I mentioned in my physical training video that I have on my channel. The link will be in the description down below. Please check that out if you're interested in PT and how it works. I go into major detail of all of that. So that was our 2-week quarantine. In 0 week to the first week is probably the hardest because I was getting used to everything going on. And dealing with the COVID-19 standards was a huge issue. We were marching 6 feet apart instead of the average, whatever it is, 2 to 4 feet right behind each other. They were yelling at you if you got within 6 feet. They were yelling at you if you took this mask off. And at this point of the COVID stage, nobody was wearing masks. It was a brand new thing. I've never worn a mask every day of my life, but now since I joined the military, I'm very comfortable wearing a mask. The mask was a basic part of our uniform. They told us this is your uniform. If you're not wearing it, you're wrong. So we wore masks every day and got yelled at if we did not wear masks. All these COVID standards had the MTIs really stressed out and yelling at us because they were getting watched to make sure that they were following the standards set forth by them, by their instructors watching over them. Speaking of these new precautions that we are now having to go through, I had to march, and as I was marching past one of the MTIs, I got in trouble because I walked way too close to a female MTI, and she yelled at me and said, "Don't ever get this close to me again. What are you doing?" Had no idea what to tell her, so I just looked at her and I said, "I'm sorry, ma'am." And then she stared at me. My whole flight looked at me. My MTI pretended to be pissed off at me, and I just got back in my flight formation and we continued on. So a lot of changes are going to be happening during your first 2 weeks there. So don't get discouraged, don't get mad, just adapt. Just try your hardest to adapt and you'll be just fine. I got yelled at tremendously, so did everybody in my flight. It's just a way it goes. They get you into that military mindset, they teach you discipline, they pretty much make you exactly how the Air Force wants you, and they want you to hold yourself to a certain standard. If you did violate one of these COVID precautions that they had taking place, that was an easy way to get your 341 pulled, and people had them racked up that were facing getting washed back because they were losing their mask, forgetting their mask, running outside with a water bottle. Water bottle, though, introduced as one of the major utensils that you always have to have on you. If you leave with the water bottle, you're wrong. It's 100+ degrees outside every day, and if there is a black flag out, which means over 90 degrees, they halt marching depending on what week of training you're in, and they're not having you march or stress yourself out while it's over 100 degrees outside every day. But once you get into later blocks or later weeks of training, that just doesn't matter anymore. This is only on the early stage of training they'll do that. So one major thing everybody gets in trouble for when they first get to BMT is they forget their reporting statement. Your reporting statement is sir or ma'am, trainee, your last name, reports as ordered. You have to say this before talking to any of your MTIs or anybody else in charge. It is really easy to forget this. I got in trouble so much for not saying my reporting statement. I would just say, hey, yeah, stuff like that. And they would yell at me constantly. They would say, where's your reporting statement? Sir trainee. And that's a hint to say, sir trainee, your last name, reports as ordered, and then whatever you want to ask them or say. During your first 2 weeks of training, they'll also introduce the Chow Hall when you go eat lunch, breakfast, and dinner. It's crazy at Chow Hall. You're not allowed to eat. You get 10 minutes. You're not allowed to speak. You're not allowed to look left or right. You have to eat your food and get out of there. Grab a wingman and go wait for the rest of the flight to be done. If you get up without putting your mask on right away after eating, you're yelled at. If you get up with water in your mouth or yogurt even in your mouth, I got screamed at and brutally flamed because I was swallowing yogurt as I stood up, and they just started screaming at me saying, why am I standing up? I'm gonna choke to death. Like, okay, but I didn't. There's also a lot of funny lingo you're gonna hear from your MTIs or other instructors there that is just hilarious. Like, for example, my MTIs would always say, stop being weird, trainee, stop being an individual, stop trying to be a hero, what the piss. Constantly you're gonna hear these things and it's hilarious. Try not to laugh. I've laughed a lot, and then they just get really pissed off and continue yelling at you. But it is really funny at some times in BMT. The entire time there does not completely suck. You will find joy in some little funny moments, but then other than that, you'll probably be getting yelled at. So during that first 2 weeks, we pretty much learned how to roll socks, Chow Hall, PT, and also all the stuff about your recruit living area. We got used to the military life. We went from civilians to being yelled at and getting into that military mindset. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel. I'm gonna cut this video short so it doesn't end up at 30 minutes long. Part 2 will be out really soon, so make sure you subscribe to my channel, stay tuned, and thank you for watching.